So good afternoon and welcome to our monthly May Budget Committee meeting. I'm Leslie Tarkington, the chair, and I'm going to announce that we have with us today our assistant controller and our new budget director, so Joan Lynch and Agnes Cowie. Welcome to our meeting. I think it's the first meeting when we've never had, really both Roland Geiger and Pete Minarski. So again, welcome. And we're going to begin our meeting with an executive session. So do I have a motion to go into executive session?
I'll make the motion at 1:05.
Second.
So motion made at 1:05 by Leslie Moriarty, seconded by Harry Fisher to go into executive session. Those in favor?
Aye.
So we're now in executive session. Trish, why don't you come up since we're waiting for Tyler, because I don't think you can see that. So just because of convenience, actually, just so you know, for the future, normally people sit over there, but because a lot of time we have additional staff here, and the Trish is over there, but this is fine. So we have before us this afternoon our new executive director of the Perrott Library. And so do you want to just take like 1 minute introducing yourself since you're brand new and we welcome you?
Thank you.
And then tell us why you're here.
Okay, I'm Trish Tomlinson. I am the new director of Perrott Memorial Library. I have been a library director throughout Connecticut and Massachusetts for over the past 2 decades or so. And being here in this community is a career dream realized. So thank you for the warm welcome. The reason I'm here today is to sort of explain that this was a budget I inherited from my predecessor. Yes, sir.
I have to ask, because you say it's a career dream, that I know it's a little off the agenda, but maybe you could elaborate for another 30 seconds on that, because it's interesting.
Absolutely. Other towns where I've been a library director, they've been working class towns, and I call them the little engine that could. Very limited resources, but big dreams. And the joy I've taken in running those libraries is sort of maximizing every dollar that we get, making sure it is allocated in a way that we can deliver maximum services and resources to our public. And I've been able to kind of dust it off and polish it up, and that's been wonderful. What attracted me to Greenwich, I was actually a finalist for the executive director job at Greenwich Libraries, but the Greenwich Library, in their wisdom, brought along Joe Williams, who is wonderful. But coming away from that, I knew I wanted to still, somehow keep connected to Greenwich. So when this job popped up, I was thrilled. And I was lucky enough to get a call from the board there. And being in Greenwich is, again, a career dream realized because this is a community that values arts, culture, and ideas. And really what a library does is, I have the greatest job in the world because I get to bring joy to people. And I get to make people feel seen and heard. And that's not only through books, but it's through our programming and services. So again, it's a privilege.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
So, you're here to
Yes.
it's transfers within your budget items.
Yes.
This was a budget that was prepared by your predecessor.
Correct.
And so do you want to just give us, all the detail is there on the backside, but you want to just give us like 1 minute?
Certainly. The major line items where we are asking for it to be transferred is, number one is postage, which seems small, but we have greatly increased our requests for interlibrary loans. It's when we send our books to other towns in Connecticut. That increase went up 81% this year, which is a real testament to the value of collection development at Parat. But with that comes the increased use for mailing these packages. Mileage allowance, that sort of happened early on. We had a staff member who, instead of flying to Portland, Maine, she drove. And that inadvertently kind of ate up our mileage allowance. And we have other staff members who go to regional conferences. The Connecticut Library Association has their conference in Mystic every year. And we also have great participation on committees within the Connecticut Library Association. So we do continue to drive here and there. Again, water and electric, actual costs exceeded estimate. The telephone as well. We took a big step in trying to reduce costs in that line. We went ahead and we installed a voice over IP system. So now we have one phone number with extension. It's going to save us an average of $300 per month moving forward. Fuel, again, fuel for heating, actual cost exceeded estimate. Cleaning services, we had to hire an extra cleaning service for Friday evenings and Saturdays. Our regular cleaner cannot work those days for religious observance. The patron had recognized it wasn't quite as sparkling on those days, so we brought someone in. And maintenance, it's, the grounds, the landscaping. We had some plantings that died, need replacing, and the warmer than anticipated summer and spring last year brought on some extra lawn mowing scheduling. And we had some maintenance of safety issues, so that is in maintenance of building supplies. We replaced 10 out of 12 fire extinguishers, which had failed inspection. And we had to replace emergency lights and exit signs.
Super, thank you very much. So does anyone have any questions? Harry?
Have you looked at the next fiscal year budget in light of some of these changes? You think you're going to be on track with that budget?
I have looked at it, and I want to review it with the board of directors. I think when you see the budget that comes from me, it's going to look a lot different. Kind of the way I do things is I start from zero and build from there. I don't just use the number that we used the year before, because I want to make sure we do maximize every dollar allocated. So I will get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
So our normal process is for you to get back to Roland Geiger, and then I guess maybe now Agnes, too, both of them. And then that way the information gets circulated to everyone.
Great,
Okay?
great. And I have to send some love to the whole finance department, because they were very patient in walking me through all of this.
So can I
That's
make,
nice to hear.
can I
Leslie?
make a motion to recommend approval of the
No,
transfer?
I actually had one question.
Oh, okay.
And which was my question, I think I said I had one before. I was interested, it's obviously not as much your budget, but the interlibrary loan that you just mentioned for postage, is this mostly like outgoing, or are you borrowing from other libraries too, other than within the Greenwich system? That's my first question. And is it consistently the same library? And my final question is, do the books come back in as good shape as they left?
Great questions. Interlibrary loan, I believe we do borrow as many as we send out. The Greenwich Library has an amazing collection, and we are able to share most of our resources through that, but these are very, specialized or hard to find items. And what was the last part of your question?
Do they come back as good as in the
They
same
come
shape?
back pristine.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So now I'll take the motion.
All right. So I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the transfer of $30,750.
I second.
Okay, motion made by Leslie Moriarty, second by David Weisbrod,
Routine.
Yeah, I'll suggest routine.
and as a routine motion. Those in favor? Aye. So that's 400, and you do not have to appear next Monday night, so
Terrific.
you're in good shape.
Thank you all.
very, I mean,
Thank
we'll
you.
be on our agenda, so you may want to track it.
Sure.
And of course, the meetings are, available online or TV,
Sure.
I don't know where you live.
Yep.
But anyway, it doesn't sound like you have to return.
Wonderful. I thank you all for considering this.
Thank you, Trish. So, all the best to you. So Tyler, we're ready for you. We took Trish because we couldn't find you. Okay. And we have Tyler Fairbairn, our head of Community Development Block Grant, and he's here on his annual visit.
Our annual visit, it's springtime when baseball's back and when CDBG is before the BET. So this is our annual process that we start in January. The Community Development Office puts out notice to the public, our nonprofit partners who are given 30 days to put an application together for this grant funding. Then goes through a lengthy review process with the Community Development Advisory Committee, which is comprised of RTM members, 2 BET representatives, and other board and commission members who evaluate the projects. They meet with the applicants and then make recommendations to the first selectman in April, who then, the first selectman will then take a look, make any adjustments as needed, or not as needed, but as he sees fit rather. And then we submit to BET for approval in May, prior to submitting to the RTM for approval in June, so that we can get this submitted ahead of the statutory deadline set by HUD for their approval. So this year was similar in some ways to past cycles. We had much more requested than we have available. We had about $1.5 million in requests. We are, and this changes from year to year sometime, but we are unfortunately going into this process assuming level funding. So there are some years where HUD will tell the town how much its CDBG allocation is. This was not one of those years, but because we are operating under a continuing resolution, Congress didn't pass a budget, what happens is that all the programs are funded at the prior year's level. So it's good in some ways, in that the administration has proposed eliminating CDBG entirely. So by operating under a continuing resolution, we get a stay of execution for 25, 26 at least. So I believe everybody's had a chance to review the submission I made with the recommendations and our proposed budget. We anticipate, well, we were supposed to hear this week from HUD what our actual allocation will be, but the policies and procedures we have in place in a situation like this where we have to begin submitting things and we don't know yet is, we will make adjustments as needed to the public service activities and then spread it out across the facility and housing activities if we do indeed see a reduction.
When you do that, do you do it like a percent across the board?
It's a
or do
percent
you-
across the board, yeah. On the services, we're capped at 16.25% of the total allocation. So whatever the total allocation ends up being, we can only use 16.25% of that. We don't give any grants below $5,000. It's just administratively a headache for both the groups and for us. And then we make reductions proportionally if need be.
Thank you. Questions? Leslie?
So first, just a big picture. Could they still eliminate the program?
It's an interesting question. We have been informed that we will be getting a grant. We don't know the number yet, but I suppose anything goes
Anything
these
can
days. It's the first 4 terms of the administration's power now. They tried to eliminate it each year, and Congress saved it. Going forward, I'm not sure, but at least for this year, we anticipate receiving the funds.
And now I just want to ask again a question about authority and responsibility, because once again, the first selectman has made changes in the public facility and housing activities to grant an amount to Greenwich Communities, whereas the recommendation of the committee gave different awards. So what is the BET and I guess also the RTM's authority in changing the allocations?
I am going to inquire about that. I will check with law as soon as I leave here. This is my, I think, 8th action plan here, and it has not come up yet. There was some discussion, I think it was last year, about whether the RTM had the authority to change it when it comes to them in June, but it was resolved before we got to that point where they were going to change it on the floor. So I will, I'll find out, ideally before the meeting before you guys meet on the 19th, what the authority is, because it, does it end with the BT, does it end with the RTM, right? Because it's, this gets forwarded to the RTM, and then can they change it further? So I will inquire and get back to you guys as
That'd be
soon as I
helpful.
possibly can.
Because I did speak with one of our representatives on the committee, and he was unaware that there had been any modifications to their committee's recommendations. Can you share, if you know, any of the discussion over the allocation of assets, why the 172,000 was not funded over some of the other community needs?
I'm sorry, the 172,
Is the housing authorities that Greenwich Communities will protect walkways as opposed to?
I see.
some
Yes,
of the other-
so there are, kind of the way the advisory committee approaches it is, there's just not enough money there to fund the bigger projects. So there was 521,000 plus the 54,000 in reprogramming, made available to those groups. I'm sorry, inclusive of the 54,000. So the 521 was the total. So they kind of look at it as, well, if we only fund the 2 big ones, and there's nothing left for everybody else. So I think they start with the smaller projects and then try to spread it out from there. I know there was some discussion about, on the Housing Authority about perhaps they should be addressing other issues before this particular project at Wilbur Peck, which I think was part of their justification for not funding it this year. The Housing Authority has historically been, I believe, the largest recipient of CDBG funding over the years in the town, and I know it's a challenge to spread it around, and I think the first selectman wanted to be sure that they got something, because they are serving, some of the most vulnerable residents of Greenwich.
Yeah, the majority of other projects really talk about infrastructure and projects that are difficult often to raise private money to help support. So I do have questions about that change in allocation. I especially had heard about the YMCA's intercom and emergency notification as being a very critical project, and now it's being funded for only half of what they've asked for. So, I have questions about that. So hopefully by Monday, we'll better understand when the first selectman's thought process is here. We can ask for that information, as well as what authority the BET may have in assessing this number. Then my last question, and I think it's my last question, the amount of the reprogram funds, I didn't go back yet to last year's request, but is the 54,000 a typical amount? Somehow I remember smaller numbers.
It varies from year to year. So last year it was
20,000.
just about 20,000. The year before, 104. The year before that, 172. So that money is from projects that are either canceled or come in under budget. Typically has been the case since I've been here, is that it's projects that come in under budget. We've not had to remove grants from anybody for poor performance or anything like that. So it was just this is kind of the nature of how it came in this year.
Okay, thank you.
David, do you have any questions?
No.
Howard, are you okay?
I'm fine.
Okay, so we will need 2 motions today. One for approving the request of the funds, and one for the resolution. So do I have a motion to approve the application for $780,000 $86,552.32 for the CDBG fiscal year 2025 budget.
So move.
Moved by Harry Fisher and seconded by
David.
David Weisbrod. Okay, moved by Harry Fisher, seconded by David Weisbrod. Those in favor?
So can I just ask a question?
Yes.
I don't want to vote in favor of this because I have questions on the allocation. I guess the vote won't matter whether I vote no or abstain. Okay,
That's your call.
my call.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Given where I
gave me
think
3 more
people are.
seconds to
Because I thought
decide.
he was raising his hand. So those in favor? Aye. Those voting against? Those abstaining? So that vote has passed, and that vote is 301. Okay, great. So we also need a vote on the attached resolution, and it's attached, well, it's not attached, but it's, it's right behind in the packet, and that's the resolution that we always have to pass every year. It's updated. Those in favor?
So I
A
move
motion.
it.
Harry Fisher has moved. Do I have a second?
I second.
So Harry Fisher moved, David Weisbrod seconded. Motion for approval of the resolution. Those in favor? 3. Those against? Those abstaining. So that vote, again, has passed 301. Thank you very much. And this is non-routine in both cases, which is how we always do it because it has to be passed by the BED.
And it has to have a public hearing as well,
It needs a
right?
public hearing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It opens with a public hearing? Definitely.
Yeah, Samantha, help me do that on the agenda.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you very much.
So we got you out on schedule, right?
Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so now we have a Conservation Commission, so I see that both Sarah and Beth are here. So we're going to do CC2, which is the cemetery grant. So we welcome Sarah and Beth Evans, the department head, both from Conservation. And Sarah, help me with your last name.
Cocaro,
Okay, sorry about that.
that's okay.
So you're here because you have a grant for the cemetery. Do you want to just give us a quick?
Sure, yeah. So this is the second year that Greenwich has been awarded the Neglected Cemeteries Grant through the State of Connecticut Office of Policy and Management. We were first awarded back in 2023 for $5,000 to do restoration efforts. We selected Byram Cemetery based on some community feedback. And we had a restoration expert come down and do repairs on gravestones, grave markers, fixed a hazardous grave marker, some leaning, broken markers. There were 14 total that we were able to repair using the funds from the state, and then we matched with some funds from our conservation budget as well. And we didn't get through all of them with the funds, but the state opened up the grant again in 2025. We applied, and this time we got $8,000. So we're here to ask for your approval to appropriate the funds for the restoration efforts in Byram Cemetery.
And this again, Byram,
Yes.
like the last time.
Yep.
Are there other cemeteries that need this too, or is this the one that's most in need?
We, like I said, based on some community feedback that came to our Conservation Commission meeting, we looked at Byram Cemetery. It definitely was in need of, like I said, there was a hazardous monument that needed immediate repairs. There are a number of other historic cemeteries around Greenwich. So we're hoping that if the state opens this up every other year, that we will continue to apply and get funds and then just keep slowly repairing and doing restoration. So, yeah.
Thank you. I mean, this is a very nice project. I know at one point, we actually did it up at Nathaniel Witherall, you know, because they have a Potter's cemetery on that property. So, any questions?
I move that we grant this appeal, not appeal, this appropriation for $8,000.
Is there a sec-
Second.
Moved by David Weisbrod, seconded by Harry Fisher. Is this a routine
This
item,
could be routine.
David?
Yes, absolutely.
Routine? Those in favor?
Aye.
So that motion has passed 4-0-0 as a routine item, so you don't need to come back on this one.
Thanks.
The next item that we have on the agenda is a conservation request for approval to use a MMI grant, which is the Materials Management Infrastructure Grant Program. And now that grant is for $15,892. And Jim Michael is joining the team because this also includes an area of his department, breaking down the silos. Welcome, Jim. So, Sarah, do you want to explain why you're here?
Sure. I do want to start off by saying next month in June will be the 5-year anniversary for the Town of Greenwich Municipal Food Scrap Recycling Program, which started in June of 2020, and it was hard to look back on that time. But the program, which is located at Holly Hill Resource Recovery Facility, was a collaboration between the Greenwich Recycling Advisory Board, Waste Free Greenwich, Greenwich Green and Clean, and the town. This voluntary food scrap recycling program was established to divert food scraps from our municipal waste stream and address the town's waste management challenges. In response to community feedback, 2 additional satellite drop-off sites were established to increase convenience and accessibility to the program. In June 2021, collections started at the Old Greenwich Farmers Market at the Living Hope Church, Community Church. And in January 2022, another collection location was provided at Round Hill Community Church. Since the summer of 2020, the community has diverted over 600,000 pounds or 300 tons of organic matter from the waste stream. Every year, tonnages collected have increased, but they continue to be a fraction of the potential food residual that could be captured and diverted from the waste stream. Participation in the Greenwich Food Scrap Recycling Program is growing slowly but steadily. We estimate that between 7 and 10% of the 22,000 plus Greenwich households currently participate in the program. Waste Free Greenwich conducted a survey that revealed that there were significant barriers to participation. Survey respondents who were not currently using the program cited that the locations of the drop-off sites were inconvenient and the times of the drop-off were limiting. On the other hand, a majority of the program participants indicated that the location of the preferred drop-off site was convenient, but more than half noted that the available hours were only moderately convenient or inconvenient. Other barriers cited in the survey included difficulty parking at satellite drop sites, unaffordability or lack of Holly Hill permit, heavy traffic at the transfer station, and use of backyard composting. So the state has a goal to reduce its waste diversion by 60%. So we took that in mind, and we used the feedback from the survey, and we applied for and were awarded the grant of $15,892 from the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection's DEEP. Their inaugural, it's the first ever that it's happened, the MMI, the Materials Management Infrastructure Grant Program. It was developed to provide grant funds to municipalities and regional entities to develop small to medium scale waste management infrastructure. The competition was very strong. There were 20 applications submitted, requesting approximately $30 million in funding. Greenwich was one of only 9 municipalities in the state and regional entities to receive an award. So we're using 3 smart food collection bins to broaden food scrap diversion efforts and with the introduction of 2 public drop-off stations. Building on the success of the voluntary municipal food scrap recycling program, this initiative gives residents expanded access to secure, durable collection units for convenient and easy food waste disposal. The program is designed to be a cost-effective alternative to curbside pickup, offering a scalable solution that addresses the growing waste crisis while supporting more sustainable habits. By starting with 2 strategically placed drop-off locations, the town aims to boost participation, reduce municipal food waste, and evaluate program success for future expansion. And I should say that this is there is an app involved, and it is free to users to download. There's no cost to a resident to participate. The bins, they are reinforced, heavy-duty built units that are fully enclosed and inaccessible to pests, and the doors lock automatically to prevent unauthorized access and contamination. So the people that are participating in this want to do it. A fill sensor measures bin fullness to prevent overfilling and informs the contracted organics hauler where and when collections are needed. The hauler will pick up the materials 2 to 3 times a week and transport it to a licensed processing facility. A web-based management system tracks participation and use on a bin-by-bin basis to provide data on reporting such as use pattern and volumes collected. The hauler will provide additional data on tonnages diverted. The Conservation Department, with support from Waste Free Greenwich, will monitor and maintain collection stations, analyze data, conduct training and educational outreach, including information sessions and on-site training and outreach materials. Following feedback from the last Board of Selectmen meeting on November 26th, the project was scaled back from 4 locations to just 2 at Binney Park and Coscob Park. We wanted to note that Coscob Park was reevaluated after the application was submitted. We consulted with Parks and Rec and found 2 locations in the Coscob Park that met the criteria for siting. Focusing on just 2 locations, so again, Coscob and Binney, gives ample opportunity to thoroughly assess the procedures, costs, tonnages collected, participation, and educational programming, and to build on the successful program before possible expansion. The Conservation Department would use the MMI grant to cover the capital infrastructure costs associated with the project, including the smart bins, the concrete pad, installation of the units, freight, and the apps to go along with the bins. The Department of Public Works will cover the operational cost of hauling under line item 52510, waste removal services, which is a $5.4 million line. This cost is estimated to be less than 1% of the monies in this budget line. The project has been well-researched. We consulted with 2 licensed organic hauling companies, Curbside, Compost, and Blue Earth, whom we both currently work with in the town. 2 smart bin companies, we talked to CT Deep, and 2 peer communities with similar programs, Manchester and West Hartford. The project was developed in response to community feedback from a survey answered by 170 residents. And we did look at over 20 locations that were evaluated, and the final selection made in consultation with Parks and Rec. So we asked the Budget Committee to appropriate the grant funds for this project in order to strengthen our town's waste management infrastructure and divert valuable compostable material from disposal to help create a more predictable, sustainable, and cost-effective waste management system for our town and taxpayers in the coming years. I want to make 2 final points. In January of this year, 2025, a law law had passed earlier, but began, which was the Connecticut Commercial Organics Recycling Law and Public Act 23-170, which essentially means for every commercial food wholesaler, distributor, industrial food manufacturer, processor, grocery store, country clubs, hospitality, hospitals, public and private educational facilities that generate an annual volume of 26 tons or more of source-separated organic material must comply with this law. The Environmental Affairs Department, in collaboration with DPW, Waste Free Greenwich, and Food Rescue, hosted an educational webinar on these entities, as well as sending letters to commercial food businesses to help educate and provide further details about the law. Greenwich continues to look for waste solutions that help reduce costs and environmental impacts while leading by example, and this grant will help do that. Lastly, I do want to acknowledge the time that the Board of Selectmen spent discussing, vetting, and voting on supporting us to apply for this grant. Not only did we receive endorsement from our Board of Selectmen, but we received letters of support from our state representatives, Hector Arzano, Steve Meskers, Rachel Khanna, as well as letters from Waste Free Greenwich and Jim Michael. Jim is here today with us. Beth and I are here to answer any of your questions. We thank you.
Thank you very much. So do I have any questions? Leslie, oh, Harry.
Yeah, given that law that requires non-residential kitchens to recycle, how do you prevent them from using these bins?
When we reached out to them, a lot of them are actually already doing food diversion. So they're actually donating a lot of foods, especially like the country clubs, the schools, the hospital. They're already donating a lot. And then they're using the curbside compost pickup, the haulers, to come and get it from them. So we were pleasantly surprised by that. A lot of them in town are already doing the right thing.
More questions?
Leslie or David?
Just specifically to understand timing, first of all, you need RTM approval for the grant, is that right? Or no?
Conservation Commission does not need to go to the RTM for approval.
It is covered by, I looked at the resolutions quickly. I didn't see that it captured it, but you're saying.
Resolution 19.
It does, okay, good.
Can we just stop 1 second?
Yeah.
Karen, have you looked at that resolution, Resolution 19? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Not specifically, but I know that that's what they're using.
That's what, I'm sorry.
She said that's what they're using. Only because I just want to make sure that it doesn't come up later. If you, to read the language of Resolution 19.
So can I just ask, or, Karen, to just, if they have a law committee meeting on Thursday, to just look at this item on their agenda? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, but I want to make sure we close the loop on this very quickly, because you'd have to submit documentation by noon on Friday to get into the June RTM call, if you need authorization. So that would be helpful.
So similar to the neglected cemeteries grant, resolution number 19 allows us to apply for and accept grants offered by the state. This grant falls under that as well.
There is a qualification, so we can look at the language here. If you want to open up the resolutions in the budget book. But let me go on to my other
yeah,
questions while that's being done.
That's fine, but Sarah, the law committee, BET Law Committee meets, and Beth too, I'm sorry, meets on Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock. And so you might just, depending on this conversation, because Leslie's just asked Joan to look at something, you may just note that on your calendar so that, if possible, you could attend one of the other.
Yeah, just to make sure it doesn't say land conservation efforts, that it's a broader conservation efforts. That's the only, if you can read it, Joan.
The Conservation Commission is authorized to apply for, enter into the related grant agreements, and accept grants offered by any department and/or agency of the state of Connecticut, the federal government, quasi-state agencies, and nonprofit corporations and foundations for the purposes of natural and cultural resource conservation, environmental protection, and/or restoration, and related programs, and such grants shall become appropriations that the comptroller shall add to the appropriate accounts upon approval by the BET.
So it's,
Seems to work.
okay.
So I would still suggest that at least you talk with Karen Fasciolotis and see if she's going to, bring it up on Thursday, or she can get in touch with you, Sarah, just so that, you're coordinated.
And I think that first phrase sounds like it covers it, the natural, whatever.
I would tend to agree with you,
Just want to
but
make sure
we're not
you don't
the
have a
law committee.
problem later on. But just specifically on how the grant works and what it's covering, you're saying the grant's going to cover the capital costs, the two bins coming in. The ones that are existing, will they stay in place, or are you replacing the program
Yeah,
totally?
the satellite stations at the churches will stay. Those will not change. These are in addition to, and they're
Okay.
the special smart bins.
And you provide a lot of.
And the Holly Hill, right, well, that will stay
Okay.
too.
You provide a lot of descriptions over their functionality and how it will make it easier and improve access for residents participating. The operating costs primarily include the weekly, biweekly, or tri-weekly, whatever's determined based on usage, removal of the compost, if you will.
right.
Are there, other than that removal cost, what specifically other operating costs would you anticipate, if any?
We have the annual fee for the app, which is
nominal.
$400 a year, which we anticipate covering. It's covered in the grant in this first year, but moving forward, Conservation's able to cover that. But otherwise, the operating costs are as outlined with the hauling.
And then I noticed one other question, which sometimes can be problematic, and again, I just want to get it on the table. In the letter from DPW, it talks about an indemnification, a hold harmless clause, and I'm wondering how you're planning on addressing that particular requirement.
So generally with something like this, we will require the hauler to make sure that they are indemnifying the town for that purpose. So we kind of flip the responsibilities onto the party that's gaining from this process.
Okay.
I've got questions. Oh, unless you.
Wait, I'm letting her finish up.
And it doesn't say hold harmless, it talks about, so if you put paperwork in effect for the supplier of the equipment, and then also the weekly distributor in the performance of their services to carry the liability.
Yeah, that's generally how we do that. Or if it's of the group that is requiring the town to hold them harmless that's running this, we generally are very successful at negotiating that with with those companies to have that language removed from their contract.
Okay. And then it's really, going forward, we're not committing to, clearly this is a program, sounds like will benefit us in terms of our hauling tonnage, but there's not an obligation to continue the program if somehow it did not seem to work within what we can provide.
That's correct. This is very much a trial program. We're hoping that it is successful and we expand it, but it is very much in the initial phase.
And the process, really, we have the award of the grant, but in implementation, you're going to go through an RFP process to both get the suppliers of the equipment as well as the providers of the weekly service.
Correct.
Those are my questions for the moment.
So David, you said you had a question?
Yeah, so Jim, could you estimate the cost to the DPW and how you would deal with it?
Based on information we've been provided, it's going to be approximately, $10,000 to $15,000. And that's going to be included within be utilized under our waste removal budget of 5.4 million. So that's about 0.2% of that overall line item. So we don't feel that is going to significantly impact that line.
And does this have any bearing on tipping fees? Would this not reduce the effect? Wouldn't it be offset to some extent by the tipping fee line item?
The whole purpose in this program is to try and reduce the amount of waste coming into Holly Hill, and therefore would reduce the amount of money that we would be paying for the waste to go out. And so, that's the whole goal of this program.
So you're estimating about 10 to 15,000, although I saw somewhere the number was even less than that, but you're probably putting in a cushion, are you?
Just being conservative with that
Conservative.
statement.
And that number is in turn offset by the tipping fees that we would be paying out to some extent, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Are you in favor of this?
Yes.
Why?
It's in our opinion, it's the right thing to do. It's to try and give show that the town is committed to reducing waste, which is a program that in general the community should be looking at. It's hopefully, like you said, it's hopefully going to reduce our cost of removal of material. So those are all main reasons. So
And has the first selectman weighed in on this in any way?
Yeah, we went to the Board of Selectmen meeting back in November, December timeframe, when we were about to apply for the grant to get their support. And so it went to 2 meetings. They had a first read, second read, and they came back and unanimously supported it.
Yeah, we all got an email from the first selectman. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I will read one sentence. He says, this is Fred, I can attest to the fact that every other municipality that I know would jump all over this, and I hope Greenwich does the same. So I think we have a pretty wholehearted support from the first selectman. I think that's it for now. Questions?
Thank you. Harry?
Jim, have you run any numbers on expected tonnage deflection? Do we know anything from the previous experience of the other 2 locations in town? Or do we not know enough?
I would say we don't know enough yet, but
But the volume's going to be, or the tonnage is going to be tracked, right?
yes.
We have estimates based on the size of the bins, and if they're collected 2 times a week or 3 times a week, what that would look like over time. Yep.
Okay, it'd be interesting to know before next year's budget season, get a report from you, say, in 6 months as to what the experience level is.
Yeah.
So we really have an understanding of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just one other thing. In my thinking, right, when I think of this as a pilot, it's a very innovative program. We're trying it out in 2 locations. We're the first one to get a grant. We were in strong competition with other municipalities. We're fortunate enough that the quality of our application resulted in getting the grant. But at the end of the day, it's a pilot. I mean, it's really nothing more than a pilot. It may work, it may not work. We hope it works. But in the worst case, it doesn't work and we've learned from it and we move on. If it works, then perhaps it can be expanded and, made to scale. But we should be looking at this, am I right in asking this as a pilot where we would want to encourage innovation and experimentation, where the costs are underwritten by the state, and the learning would be very useful in an area that has tremendous focus for good reason all across the state. Is that the right way to look at this?
I think that's exactly the way to look at this, and the Conservation Department anticipates doing public outreach, advertising this program, and trying to get more participation from the public so that we hope that it expands. But yes, it is a pilot program.
Leslie?
Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge the assistance of the volunteers to get you to this point. One, they're playing a role in the ongoing support of the pilot. But just like so many of our other town programs, it's really coming from the residents of town wanting to increase and broaden the services that we're providing.
100%, yeah.
Absolutely.
So I have a few questions too. On this Connecticut DEEP letter, it talks about insurance documentation, where we issue certificates of insurance naming DEEP and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's a whole section on it. Have you explored that insurance and what will be the cost of that insurance? Is that sort of an unfunded mandate of this program?
The insurance for the bins at they're on town property.
It said, to avoid delay in executing the final contract, please submit at your earliest convenience the following required documents. It talks about a resolution, it talks about insurance documentation, and the one I'm questioning you about now is the one that talks about insurance documentation.
Yeah, I believe Tyler actually helped us pull those documents together because he had a meeting with the MMI folks at DEEP. I believe we have all of that, so I'm happy to send that to you as soon as I get back to my
Yeah,
desk.
I mean, I think we should know, what the cost of the insurance is. I mean, and quite frankly, I agree with you that it's good to do things like this and consider them, a pilot program, but, it would then be good to understand, what the annual costs of the program are or whatever, because otherwise, you can't evaluate the pilot. So that wasn't going to be my next question, but I will ask the question now, since we're talking about that. And that section is quite detailed on the insurance. So,
Yeah, we have submitted that to DEEP. I do have those documents, Leslie, I just don't have them with me right now. I can
Okay.
get you those.
But, what are the metrics for this? How are you going to determine, this, the success of the pilot program or whatever? Have you set up the parameters for how it will be evaluated?
Yeah, we have. So right now, we're hoping to double the amount of households that are participating in the program. We hope to see an increase in so we've been, with volunteers and the town have been tracking how many pounds of food scraps have been brought every week to the Holly Hill, as well as the 2 current satellite drop-off stations. So we have metrics on what's existing, and we're hoping to see an increase with these 2 other sites to increase that amount. So increasing households, increasing food scraps that are being diverted from Greenwich's waste stream, which will hopefully lower the amount of tipping fees that we're paying for with our municipal solid waste, and then to also reach families and households that we haven't reached before with this. So we're hoping that this ease of accessibility makes it easy for anybody to participate in this. who Wants to. So.
Have you set a target tonnage as far as how much you want to increase?
Yeah, I do. We wanted to, we haven't set an exact goal of tonnages that we wanted to collect, but I believe if you do the math for, if every bin is, 65-gallon tote, if we can fill that twice a week, that's X amount of tonnage. If you can fill it 3 times a week, that's another number. So we're hoping that, that will be quite consistent and substantial.
So I would like to see some kind of a chart or something, or just a page that shows, what are these, if this is a pilot program, we'll say for fiscal year '26, what are the success parameters, or what goals are you trying to, what the goals are, and then whether you measure them, I don't know how, monthly or quarterly, whatever, so that, or just annually, just so that we know what, it's just like a personnel thing. What are your goals? And then how to review against them. I think that would is that sort of fit also what you're talking about, David?
I mean, I think that the conservation is going to be motivated themselves to, promulgate throughout the community what their results are. I mean, in other words, yeah, I think goals are always good, but
Well, I like just to understand, laid out. So let me go on and ask a couple more of my questions. I believe, or I think I read someplace that there were like 170 households that were surveyed. And so, and we're 62,000 people in Greenwich. So, if this is expanded, do you have a viewpoint, or have you heard from any of the private haulers, that we all are using? How will that impact their, income? And quite frankly, this is the same kind of questions I ask, whether it's leaf blowers and, we have our private people that have to, buy the electric ones, whatever. What is the impact? And many of these people live in town too, and they are our residents and citizens. Is there any kind of, or is this so small that it really won't impact them?
So, Leslie, the haulers don't weigh the garbage at the end of the street from your property, right? So somebody diverting food scraps from their waste stream is not going to impact a private hauler at all. And in fact, there are some private haulers that are now incorporating picking up food scraps. So if anything, potentially could help them if people wanted to select having curbside, which there are a lot of people that do that. They have their own curbside food scrap recycling pickup. But this won't impact a hauler because of, 10 pounds less of waste from their property is going to go to food scraps now.
Well, I was thinking more collectively and, overall, but, okay, so you're saying that that's nuts. I want
I
to
mean,
come,
Leslie, I think the other thing that I would make a comment is, the haulers will not have to, if they reduce the amount of waste that they're bringing to Holly Hill, they're gonna be paying less in tipping fees to Holly Hill that will actually increase their profitability,
Right.
technically, so.
It's unlikely they're going to lower our fees at our homes because we're diverting other parts of trash.
I'm sorry?
I said it's unlikely, they charge me by the visit, not by the poundage, yet they pay by their tonnage. So it's unlikely they're going to lower the price for my pickup because they're carrying less volume.
So I have Mr. Bonastia, who I understand from Holly Hills, considered to be one of the Cadillac haulers or whatever. But I'm now getting letters in from other haulers offering much lower prices than I'm offering. So, I do think there's competition out there, but that's not what we're here to talk about. I had other questions here. So let's talk about the two locations, and help me understand this a little bit more. Right now, I've gone to the Old Greenwich, I live Central Greenwich, or, but I go to the Old Greenwich Farmers Market, in the summertime on Wednesday afternoons, and that's a specific time, and it's very managed, and, I've certainly seen them collect. You can do it also at Holly Hill, and again, very managed by professionals that we have at Holly Hill, and also very specific hours from 7 to 2:30 weekdays and 7 to 12 on weekends. But what about Round Hill? How do they handle this? Is it specific times, like when?
Yeah, it is. It's a very specific few-hour drop-off on Wednesdays, which is the same time as the farmers market in Old Greenwich as well. So, yeah, if you missed that window for the backcountry, there isn't an option for you up there.
So then, let's carry this forward. So we've selected two parks, in two Bentons and one, but two parks. And our parks are basically opened 24 hours a day, correct?
Not Greenwich Point, no. There are
Oh,
parks
is this
that-
at Greenwich Point?
No, I'm
I
saying
thought this
it's-
was Binney.
It is. So, yeah, the Binney Park and Cascade Park. Yeah, the locations that we selected are, the Binney Park is at in the parking lot of the town. There's a parks maintenance shed. So it's in that parking lot with the maintenance shed. So there's, lights on and floodlights if somebody needs to go. That's the Binney. And then Cascade, similarly, is in a spot that's open, that people can access 24/7. It's not, you don't have to drive all the way into the park.
So, is this apt to attract other people? Just, either they don't have the app, or they don't care about the app and just leave their garbage there or dump other things. And then, the next step is what happens with attracting little wild animals and all those kind of things, if things are dropped by. What are the controls? I understand what the controls are, as I said, for Old Greenwich, or, I wasn't, in Holly Hill, I wasn't as familiar about. But what are going to be the controls for managing this, and what kind of impact on the parks or people walking their dogs or whatever?
Yeah, so there are other communities in Connecticut, and let me just.
I'm sorry?
There are other communities in Connecticut that have implemented these smart bins, and they found that contamination is low, meaning that people aren't just signing up for the app just to mess with the system. They're doing it because they want to. Oftentimes, they're located next to another garbage bin, like a small garbage or recycling bin. So people, if they're like, oh, I'm not sure if this is food scrap safe to put in the bin, I can just put it in the garbage or recycling bin. So in a sense, people that sign up want to do this. So In terms of controlling it, they're going to be picked up 2 or 3 times a week by a hauler who can communicate directly with DPW or our department to say, you know, we've had high level of contamination. And through the app, we're able to then communicate to the users who used it recently, you know, please remember, don't put in your compostable, whatever, plates that maybe aren't acceptable. So there's a way to communicate with people too that are using it, going, if you're using it wrong or need more education, we can provide that. It's a fully enclosed bin, meaning you need to scan a QR code on your phone, and it will, you press a lever with your foot, so you can actually just take your hands and use to drop off your food scraps, meaning, you know, animals can't just get in there. It's fully enclosed, there's no pests available. Odors are reduced because it's enclosed, so the smell's not gonna waft away. And in the summertime, the hauling companies actually replace the liner. They might actually do that all year round, but, so they try to keep it a clean bin, and sometimes we even they will clean the bins for us too. So, you know, contamination is low, animals can't get in, smell is reduced. We have access to it to see it'll be right next to a Parks facility. Parks lets us know if there's a problem. So we've tried to anticipate and manage for those problems that could come up.
So I've had 2 different people talk to me about, and I'm only because I've been talking to them, but, you know, about the issues, say, at Greenwich Point with animals because of the trash receptacles there, and also Bruce Park. Now, neither one of these are the ones we're talking about, but, you know, how they get overflowed and things are, you know, whatever. I just don't understand if you're doing this 24 hours a day, how people might not just leave things there or be tempted now that they know.
I'll give you another example. You know, I walk in Bruce Park frequently, and I have seen New York plates drive up and dump their garbage in our garbage bins, and then drive off. And you'll hear me yelling and screaming at them, but that's about, you know, the extent of it. You know, again, what are the, and the other issue with some of the parks is that we only have trash pickup a couple of times a week, and even then you have people disposing of household garbage and other garbage, especially in the summer. It seems to be more frequent. And, you know, I guess the question is, how are we going to make sure that that's not happening in Greenwich? And I'm just having a little hard time getting my hands around it.
I think we're gonna have that problem with regular garbage bins or recycling bins out there. I think the communities that we spoke to, we reached out to West Hartford and Manchester, they did not have this problem. So I think this is a pilot program. I think people that are gonna do this program, they're not, you know, the Binney Park location, the Cascab location, these were selected intentionally. The park staff that recommended these locations knows the park. You know, we obviously hope that doesn't happen. That's
Well, yeah, but
horrible.
Karen, it can happen. You have to have the app to open the,
Well, that's my point, though. They won't use the app, they'll just dump it.
but they can dump it in wherever you looked at it, Bruce Park. They don't have to come all the way to Binney Park to dump it. They can dump it at Bruce. You've seen them dump it. Why would they dump it at a secure location that has to have an app to open it? If you want to dump it where it's easy. Why dump it where it's hard?
You know, I do relate to this for, you know, I see the highway, how they now closing some of the highway rest stops just because of issues like this. But, you know, what we're talking about is, you know, Karen was talking, and I didn't call on you, David. So
You didn't call on Karen either.
I,
No, so if you want to play that game, you don't want to call on Karen, don't call on Karen. You don't want to, but don't, I didn't call on you.
okay, okay.
All right, let's stop that.
Okay, so now I've lost my place.
Can I make a comment on that same topic?
On the same topic, yes.
Just on the table, clearly, as David pointed out, the risk is there for all of our trash. And I would imagine as an operating department, I'm looking to Mr. Michael now, this is something that our departments monitor, and we would pivot and create solutions, right? It's hard to solve for every problem in advance if this is even a problem that's going to exacerbate what we currently experience.
Yeah, I mean, we work with parks as well on people dumping things. We work with our highway division on people dumping things. The interesting thing that sometimes people are not the most smart about dumping things because they leave their mail in there that has their name and address listed on it. And we will sometimes go through that stuff if we find stuff dumped in different places and have the police department make a visit to them or contact them in ways. So, we don't see it as a major problem. We do try to monitor it as best possible. If we start seeing abuse of a certain location, then we have ways that we can add, ways to observe the activities that might be going on at that location for a temporary basis to see if we can try and find out who might be doing it. So there's ways that we try to curb this activity, and it's been pretty successful in the past.
So I have a question. Why, if you went to the Board of Selectmen in November and December, why wasn't this brought to the Budget Committee in February, either by the DPW or by the Conservation Commission? Why have you waited to now on a project that appears to be a pilot program for DPW for fiscal year '26? Is this a one-year pilot? How many years is this pilot?
It's 1 year.
This
1
is a
year.
one-year grant, but to be clear, we did apply for the grant in December. We were notified that the grant had been awarded to Greenwich in April. This is mid-May.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. So,
Make a motion?
no, because now I have my questions for the DPW. So I'm going to understand this. I don't believe I approved any money for this program in the DPW, in the hauling. I believe that when I approved the DPW, the amount for the hauling, I was approving for Holly Hill and our project there. And it was all under the existing Wind Waste Innovations contract. So, one of the reasons that I wanted to have this as a first read, which is what it is on the agenda, is because I believe that just the same way that Sarah and Beth have come for a one-year program, that we should be doing the same thing with the DPW so that we can establish metrics and then be able to measure them. And if things are changing on the other contract, that we understand what's being changed. So, again, one of my questions are there any provisions in our contract with Wind Waste Innovations that would either need to be amended or could be in violation? Is there any kind of review of that contract that needs to be done? As for Jim.
So this does not conflict with that contract that we have with Wind Waste City Carting. That contract actually also expires in June of 2026. But this is a separate program that would not be part of that contract. In addition to address one of your other statements there, the line item that we're utilizing for this is not just for the Wind Waste contract. It also includes other disposal of different items that we do at the transfer station and other locations, so.
And that's never been delineated for us. Are there subsections of that we should be advised of, and should that be accounted for differently? I mean, we certainly delineate, for a large number like $5 million, we certainly delineate when we're dealing with the BOE or, the other departments. Should we now be looking at our accounting for that particular object code and break it down into further delineations?
I'm trying to think of a good way to compare this to, and the thing that I'm thinking about is like for office supplies, this is just a different type of office supply that we're paying out of the office supply category for removal of waste. This is a different aspect of waste removal that we're paying for out of that line item that still is intended for the removal of waste.
So I would call this misleading that you plan to do something like this and not advise
I
us.
take issue with that.
I'm
I don't
sorry,
think-
David, you were
I'm
called
taking
upon.
issue. I don't think there's a thing that Jim Michael is doing, or anybody here, that's misleading. It's a
We-
gross mischaracterization,
we were not-
inappropriate. You're harassing these poor people. They're just trying to get approval for a simple grant, and you're telling them that they're misleading us. It's unacceptable.
Thank you, David, for your tirade. Okay, so, I am serious about this question. Can you separate this out and come back with a separate request for appropriation for this project?
I don't think he needs to do that. I think it's inappropriate.
I'm sorry, I didn't ask you,
I
David.
don't care if you ask me. I'm telling you.
I think this falls within the waste removal line item. And if that line item were to be exceeded for the year, then we would come in for an additional appropriation. And if it were to be exceeded because of this item, we would identify it as that. But we do not anticipate that this item is one, especially with the expected cost of this line that would be there to, exceed that line for the year.
So,
Ask a follow-up.
Karen Basilos,
Jim, I think what,
can you take the speaker here, please? I'm sorry. The microphone so that we include you for the,
you, I didn't have to get up, thank you, Agnes. Jim, I think what we would be interested in is some way of tracking the numbers under your waste management or whatever the budget code is, just to see, what the expenditures would be as we expand the program. We would have some sort of idea going forward. So I think that the point here is that if we could do a sub-line or a whatever of that budget to track the actual expenditures as you go forward.
I mean, we go through and we keep track of all our different wastes and all the different waste types that are leaving Holly Hill and everywhere else on a regular basis. We have monthly reports on all the different pieces. This will be a separate invoice that will be coming to us. I'm sure we will be putting that into our cost. It will not just be, we'll not just make it disappear, so.
No, but again, to be able to individually track,
We can ask for the information from our finance department. I am sure DPW would be happy to give us.
you weren't called on either. You could have
That is
asked.
correct. Ms. Parkington, may I speak?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm sure that DPW would cooperate to say what is a cumulative expense for the hauling. We can ask our finance department to be able to aggregate those bills. That's not a hard question. They're not hiding information. I'm not saying you are. I'm saying, I understand, we can't micromanage the departments here. And that's what, I'm addressing this to Ms. Tarkington's comments, not to yours, Karen. I think you tried to help put a better context into the request. I want to make a point, though. When I asked for this item to be on the agenda, because the chair did not put this on the agenda.
No, because
to
we
move it
we
forward.
had 2 meetings set up.
Excuse me, I'm
Leslie's
speaking, I
talking.
have the floor at the moment, okay? So I asked this to be on the agenda as an action item. I don't believe that writing first read, that there's any Robert's rules about indicating first read on an agenda that it's required. So I intend on making a motion for recommend approval of this grant by the Budget Committee. And I'm just indicating that I need time whenever you finish your comments. But I do want to talk about this being a pilot program, and I still struggling for what your concern is about approving the pilot program.
So I do think that it should be structured as a pilot program. So just as I was saying earlier, so that we can evaluate it as a pilot program. I actually had in my comments, when we get back to the economic conditions report, I had circled the fact that year-to-date, our tipping fees are down by $308,000, and our lower waste removal is up by $619,000. So I was going to, under our expenses side, so I look at these numbers every single month, as do you. And so, what I'm now learning is when I'm looking at these numbers, there may be other factors in there distorting them. And so, we spent a tremendous amount of time, 3 or 4 full day, hours sessions, back when we approved this tipping fees program. And, a program like this, I believe, should have come to the budget committee in February, but more important.
Get the grant till April. How
They
could it come
applied for
now?
the grant, and we knew about it. Now to come and say they have to rush, there's an issue, David, okay? So I am now saying that, what I have here are numbers, and I've relied on using these numbers. And the more we do these kind of things and, veer away from this, the less accurate it is for finance. And I guess I was surprised by this conversation on this. I had hoped that we could set up a separate object code to be able to track this program, and that was one of the purposes of meeting together. It was one of the reasons that I contacted Beth directly, which I don't normally do. Things come pretty well organized. Then, she came back to me. We set up the agenda, and I contacted Beth again, and we were going to send out the information for setting up a meeting tomorrow after Roland returns. Roland and I tried to reach Beth last Wednesday, and we didn't hear from Beth on Wednesday, and as we know, Roland is happily taking a few days off. So, again, trying to get the information, and that's why it's put on as a first read, so that we'll have all the information needed to move forward on this.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this $15,000 acceptance of this grant. Do I hear a second?
Harry, did you have something to say?
Yeah. It's clear that DPW is going to track this. Setting up a separate object code, I think, is a waste of time and money. I really do. This is going to be tracked as a pilot program between Conservation and DPW. And quite a bit of time ago, I suggested a 6-month report to us prior to the budget season. I think that should be sufficient.
I'm sorry, what kind of 6-month report are you requesting?
Quite a while ago in this meeting, I requested a 6-month report on how the pilot program's going, and I think that'll be sufficient.
So I don't think that setting up a separate object code costs any money, and I don't think that we should have a standard. You have asked that we break down the object codes for education. I don't think that creating that kind of standard for the DPW, if it's needed, is such a difficult thing, Harry.
Harry, I think your proposal makes eminent sense, and it's practical, and I think it's totally suitable for a pilot. So if you're willing to, offer that as an amendment, I would be.
I don't think we need an amendment. I
You don't
think,
really need it, I agree.
and of course, an object code costs money.
Of course it does.
Time and money, time and effort. Come on, let's move on.
Computerized.
So I believe David made a motion.
And you
You want
seconded
to
it?
repeat it? I seconded it.
Are you going to repeat your motion?
Oh, sure, happy to. I make a motion that we accept the grant for $15,000, and I'm going to get the exact amount here, bear with me.
15,892, is that what you were looking for?
I am, thank you very much. 15,892, it takes a village. I make the motion that we accept this grant for 15,892.
Leslie, you second that motion?
I repeat my second. I would like to
I'd
make
make
this,
this non-routine.
I would like to make it routine, but if someone's going to take it out of that bucket, we might as well identify that at the beginning. Will you accept it as routine?
No,
Harry, what about you for routine?
I'm sorry.
No, I expect someone would take it out on Monday, so let's leave it on routine.
Okay.
Okay, so those in favor?
Aye.
3, 0, abstain. Okay, thank you very much, and you'll need to come back on Monday. And if you can answer any questions in the interim, that would be constructive. And Sarah, if you could, just coordinate with Karen to find out what's going on the law committee if they bring up that resolution. They may or may not.
Yeah, and Monday night is also our wetlands agency meeting that starts at 7. And so if there's a way that we can be on earlier, just so I can make my applications that I need to present to wetlands as well.
Okay, you've been heard,
Okay,
at
the
least.
agenda.
I'm sorry?
We need to add an item to the agenda.
Monday. Monday,
I'm sorry?
Monday. Yeah.
No, I was to this agenda, if we're going to do it on Monday, too. Do we need to talk about the Hamilton Avenue HVAC?
Oh, I think we're finished. I think we're
Different
finished. You don't have to stay for the next one.
All right,
So I think, no, wait a second. So thank you very much, and
Thank you all.
we will see you soon.
So
Yes, Leslie.
I'd like to make a motion to add an additional item to the Budget Committee agenda, and that would be consideration of an interim appropriation for the Hamilton Avenue HVAC system
In the amount of,
in the amount of $325,000.
for design A&E.
But we
Right.
first need a motion to add the item, a two-thirds
I'll
vote.
second that.
Yeah.
So wait a second. I'm sorry. Leslie moved to add to the agenda, and Harry Fisher seconded. So,
We need
uh,
to vote in favor
no, in favor of adding to the
of adding
agenda.
to the agenda.
Correct.
Is that 400?
400. Okay. So, does someone want to talk about the item?
Yes, so based on the action last night at the RTM on the budget, which reinforced its recommendation to pursue the proposal for HAMAV HVAC system as recommended by the Board of Education for the geothermal approach, I believe that it would be responsive of the BET to request an interim appropriation for the design and engineering of the geothermal solution for the HAMAV HVAC. And I would encourage, if we vote in favor at the BET Budget Committee, I would encourage the Board of Education to include the item by Friday at noon onto the RTM call for June. And that way, they don't lose time.
I'm
moving
sorry, I'm
forward.
sorry. The motion or the
mo-
amount is
The
to,
amount, and I had, we have the CIP sheet from our budget book was distributed, and I'm just going to.
325?
Yes,
Is that the number?
325 is for the design of the system.
So can I, just because I want to make, when you made the motion to add the item to the agenda, you made the motion to add an item for the BOE for HVAC at Hamilton Avenue School for the design A&E of the thermal well
The
HVAC system,
geothermal HVAC system.
geothermal HVAC system. I just wanted to make sure that, okay. Harry or anyone, does he have any comments?
I'm sorry?
Do you have any comments?
No, I think we ought to proceed, to approve $325,000 for this project.
So,
limited to design A&E?
so I think that this is a constructive way of getting additional information. What I would like to certainly have reviewed at a similar time is the determine if we had sufficient engineering information for the traditional HVAC system, and so that we're simultaneously looking at both systems, you know, and the market prices within our own, you know, what do we call it, economic area, in terms of comparison and so forth and so on. Is this, would
Yeah,
this include looking at
Just,
that?
just note that Dan Watson is on vacation overseas. He does have his phone with him. I did text him and ask him that question. I would expect he's back by Monday, and I'll keep after it to find out what was done for the previous recommended conventional system in the way of design work. So I would expect to have that.
And, you know, hopefully that there would be sufficient design work so that, you know, it could be properly priced out and, you know, comparisons. And in looking at the design for the geothermal system,
I would like to make a point. I think that effort and that request is a total waste of money.
been
The
done.
work, the work has been done. We had the consultant do the work of comparing the two systems, and they're at the both same level of estimating the capital cost for the projects. There is a commitment for geothermal by the Board of Education, a commitment for geothermal by the RTM, and for this body to continue to push an alternate system based on one parameter is just totally inappropriate. It's a waste of time, of money, of resources. So the proposal is for focusing on the geothermal solution to move forward and get the job completed.
Exactly, exactly. It's been asked and answered 100 times, and it's gone back and forth to the RTM, and I think we just move forward on the 325 for the geothermal design work.
Harry?
Yeah, my question to Dan Watson is totally appropriate to ask him what was done for the basis of the previous request.
Well, I'm confused then. I really am. We had a study that was done by AECOM. Dan Watson has been here and opined on that and has expressed this many times at this point that he's in favor of the geothermal approach. It went to the RTM. The RTM opined on this in an overwhelming vote. So we can bang our head against the wall and it'll cost the town $30,000 a month to run a temporary arrangement that annoys everybody. Or we can proceed to do the design work on the geothermal and get on with it.
I'm sorry, David, if you don't understand my question to Dan.
No, maybe I didn't understand, so
I'm simply asking him for what work was done on the previous conventional system proposal. Was there design and engineering work done? It's a very simple question, and it's totally in order.
but what's the
No
motion?
buts.
No, what's the, I'm just,
How would
Harry,
that
I'm not trying
information be
to, I'm not
used?
trying to confront you. I'm just, I'm just confused about what the motion is right now. That's all, Harry.
Doesn't change the motion.
The motion is just to proceed with the 325. for the-
Correct.
Okay, then I apologize because I misunderstood.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So I am confused. If someone can help me. We had a motion to add something to the agenda. Do we need a separate motion to vote on this item?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
but that motion hasn't been made yet. Is that correct?
I thought I made it, but I'm happy to do it again.
Yeah.
The motion would be to add an additional appropriation request for the Board of Education for Hamilton Avenue HVAC design funds for a geothermal system.
In the amount of 325.
at 325.
And I'll second that again.
Okay.
I suggest we call the vote, and now that we're clear on the
No,
motion.
that's what I was going to suggest too. Good idea. Okay. Those in favor?
Aye.
3. Those against? 1. 0. So that motion has passed, 310, and that motion will be put on that
Was from
amount
our, here.
will be put on the what?
I was just answering Harry's question back when we looked at this in November of 2023 for the traditional system. There's a footnote here that says, no design yet. This was, their construction funds were a rough estimate from engineers.
So how much are those engineering requests? The engineering for a conventional system?
The design funds?
Design, only design.
I haven't added this up, so professional services is, there's this amount of money, I guess, 190. But
190?
the proposal here is 325, it's based on their CIP sheet, it's
And it's
updated
passed, but I
numbers.
asked the other question, so,
Yep.
since you had that in front of you.
And the vote was, what was your?
The
on
vote was
that?
310.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the economic conditions report. Correct? So, it was prepared, and we see just the summary. I'll read the summary statement in each section. General fund revenues. April year-to-date 2025 revenues were higher than last year, primarily due to higher tax collections. The 2025 budgeted taxes are $15 million higher than 2024. And so the April year-to-date revenues were higher by $11,729,000.
Just wondering if our budget director wants to make any
Well, I was going to finish and just make the comment and then ask that same question. General fund expenses, April year-to-date for both years contained the same number of payrolls, and that had been an issue, Agnes, for the last 2 months because the payrolls were
The timing of the
lagging,
payroll,
right?
yeah.
And for both years contain the same number of payrolls. Year-to-date town spending is $9.4 million higher than last year. The 2025 budget is $19.1 million higher than 2024. So from my perspective, it looks like good news that these numbers, now that we have somewhat comparable numbers, were positive by about $2.2 million approximately, something like that. So there's good news.
Before you get off that,
Harry has come.
just make a notation that 4.434 million lower Board of Ed salaries.
That's higher.
No,
Higher.
higher. That's higher.
That's higher?
That's higher.
Higher.
I have trouble with these double
Compared to-
negatives.
Yes, Harry. This is what happens when you add people that haven't been approved.
Just remember
That's
that's,
4.4 million higher than last year.
it's year over year, not considering budget.
Right.
So you would expect salaries to be higher.
Yes.
So, right, and also you would
Okay.
expect from the town standpoint, additional impact on the fixed charges because of the benefit programs and therefore negatively impacting our fund balance. So I did make the comment earlier that I had planned to make at this point in time. I had planned to compare the tipping fees, which were lower, but the cost of waste removal was basically over double what that lower cost was. So, it seemed to me that that was good news in our
It's double.
waste
it's
double.
It's double good news, right? Well, it's not double good news. We
Well,
are,
it's good news.
yeah, we're
that
spending less, but we're taking in less revenue as well.
We're taking in less revenue, but we're spending twice as much less
Yeah.
I mean,
Got it.
okay.
I understand.
So then, just moving on to the next page, conveyance taxes, even though they're in the front, you get to see it month by month,
Can I
and
ask a stupid question? I'm
no
sorry.
questions are stupid.
Thank you. Why is that? I say it's a stupid.
Well, it's in contrast to what was being said at the meeting, so, or what I've heard in rumor, but these are the facts year to date. I don't know. And now I find out, oh, they're doing other things in the department, so then I'm a little bit
No, no,
queasy
but
about these
Why
numbers.
would, maybe
Can-
Agnes and Joan have an insight?
You're not on the.
I'm sorry. It's interesting to me that the tipping fees are lower, but that also the waste removal is lower by double that. What could be causing that? Do we have any theories? We should have asked Jim.
We should
Mark.
have
I
asked
did-
Jim
I
when he
made
was
I
that-
know.
I made that point, and he didn't pick up on it. I did make that point when he was here.
You didn't ask?
No, I didn't ask him because.
Whatever.
but that-
No, I'm just, we may not know, but.
Okay, so I'll send Jim an
Joan,
email
you
and ask
think
him
you
that.
know?
I will send Jim an
Joan
email
has
and
an
ask him that.
answer.
There could be some timing of invoices there. So just, we're not necessarily comparing, it's versus prior year, but you just never know when the invoices get in.
Handy timing of invoice answer, that's always good. Thanks. I
That,
mean,
it could
We
be.
know that revenues are in, because these numbers were pulled after revenues, because that's all credit card.
So, just looking at conveyance fees, we've been talking about these things, but, this is our best year in conveyance fees for the month, for about, since fiscal year '22. And so they're strong for April. Our building permits, again, is the best month we've had since fiscal year '22. Again, strong for April. In our interest, we are very concerned about it declining. And once again, we have to go back, just last year, but prior to that, it's better than every other year that we've had. So,
so does this
these kind
translate?
of numbers are good.
Oh, yeah, they're great. I mean, and, just another question. It may be useful to spend a little more time on this page going forward. In other words, and getting the input from the team, from Agnes and Joan, as to, what does it mean to them? And in terms of how it will affect or may affect the fund balance.
It should be positive. I mean, I would
It
hope.
should be positive.
I would hope.
But it may be.
We
it
did
may
do
be-
that.
What?
We did do that.
Oh, and so what can you tell us?
So if you consider revenues and what we know for the remaining 2 months, and then expenses because of timing, using last year kind of versus total budget, the current estimate, and you have after March, Pete had sent to you kind of a similar summary, but if you do that as of April, the use of fund balance would be just under 2 million, so it is improving. Because if what he sent, so a deficit of just under 2 million. What he sent out last month was, I think, 2.5 million.
Right.
So it is improving.
So it's still a deficit.
Again, it's conservative schedule, but yes, using the same format that,
So we expect this is a tailwind of a couple of $1 million based on what we're looking at here, but we expect that to reverse itself a little bit, I would imagine, no?
No, I would think the end of the year would be strong. Usually at this time of
No,
year.
but she's talking about utilization of fund balance to the tune of 2 million, right?
that's correct.
Whereas this is showing, all things being equal,
Keep in mind, we have to recover 23 million in all of these revenues less as expenses. And so we may be doing slightly better than we were a month ago, but still, we haven't come up to 23 million. We're only returning 21 million.
But Leslie, we share your optimism, and and again, from the expense side, it's using a run rate. So there will be variances to that.
But, just to kind of put this in perspective and relative to our budget, when you just go back and look at conveyance tax, building permits, and interest, our budget for the year of those all combined was $7 million, but we're already at $7,247,000. So, we were pretty good in terms of, and again, conservative in our budgeting of these 3 areas, and they're performing for us. So, yeah, let's just keep our fingers crossed, I guess.
That's just interest. So building permits and interest, you're right, have now in this past month, met their annual budget, but conveyance tax is still lagging. So yes, I mean, we can all extrapolate from the numbers. We'll be ahead in those 3 particular revenue lines, but
But we have to remember that last year had the benefit of in the conveyance taxes of the Public Act 490 special fee that we got when those Rockefeller properties or whatever, whoever owned them, were transferred to
I think
Greenwich
that was a
Academy.
different line item.
I
I
think,
don't think it was in conveyance tax. It was different.
It's a different line item,
Yeah.
but it is considered in our analysis.
You know, I think the conveyance tax is probably a reflection of a very, very thin real estate market, and transactions are down because the inventory is down. So I wouldn't expect that to change much.
well, I think I wouldn't call it down because it looks, if, we kind of keep any kind of like average of what we've done, we're going to more than exceed our budget for conveyance taxes for the year. So,
No, yeah, but it is the 23 million in the budget that is the offset, the 23.8.
so
And the 23.8 exactly is
That's the budgeted
what we
use of
use in
fund
the fund
balance.
balance in the budget,
in the budget.
in the fiscal year 26 budget. We use, that's the amount we used when we computed the mill rate.
and we will want, again, another presentation of this assumption next Monday night as we have to set the mill rate.
Monday night, what?
We're setting the mill rate on Monday night.
Oh,
so
yeah, no. we'll
Often
definitely-
it's based on this information, so we'll ask for the presentation for
update,
the full
right.
BET and the update at that time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, one of the things that Pete said was, he was confident in our bridge revenues. And that includes CMAQ. I just, I think we're not, I wish I was as confident as he was, because he's showing our bridge and highway reimbursement down by almost $600,000. And, we haven't collected that much this year. And Gabriella said that we should get about $2 million. And so I'm not sure whether she was thinking fiscal year or calendar year, so anyway. The other interesting thing is Nathaniel Witherall. So when I looked at the expenses and the revenues,
Revenues always lag.
There's revenues for April would not be in there. Expenses are, because payroll is, but not necessarily, but it would be comparable, the expenses would be comparable to prior year, except for the $2.8 million funding by the town was recorded early. So you'll see a timing, that's the timing difference that is referred to on that schedule.
so what they're showing is here in this report is that the expenses are up year over year by 280,000. And the revenues, where are the revenues? They were someplace, because I got them.
You have to take out the 2.8 million that the town's
So
registered.
you would
there.
take out the 2.8, and the average monthly revenues would be 2.2 to 2.4.
So where's that coming in now then about?
We
In
don't,
April.
they don't yet have the final revenues. That's mid-month is usually when it's closed and everything's billed. But census is down right now, so April is not going to be a great month.
And where is census about?
It's been running in the mid to upper 160s.
160s, not even 175?
No, well, it dropped into the 160s because of the flood, and it has not rebounded yet.
Thank you. Okay. So, thank you on the report and all the additional information. So, our next item is Budget Committee minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the April 14th, 2025 minutes?
I'll move the minutes.
I'll second that.
Moved by Leslie Moriarty, seconded by Harry Fisher.
Should we
Those in-
just clarify that it's the version that was handed out to us today?
It is the version that's handed out, and I circulated that version to.
Right, not the one that's on the packet.
Oh, no. No, 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 no. It's the one handed out today. Those in favor?
Aye.
400. So, Chair report, I will just say that last night, the RTM basically approved the budget, certainly the operating budget as presented, and the capital budget with a couple of items removed around, we'll say, $5.5 million. And so, at least as coming back to us, the mill rate remained at 2.81 increase. And also, the sewer tax mill rate increase came in, similarly to the 0.73 increase that it went to the RTM. And other than that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
That we adjourn.
Oh, I should say that our next meeting is Tuesday, June 17th,
Tuesday, June 17th.
at 1 PM. That's our next meeting.
Tuesday, June
So David has moved that we adjourn.
Second.
Leslie has seconded it at 3:07. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.